The audience-acclaimed sequel to 2018's Venom has finally come out. I am Bryan Schink, I'm joined by Hunter Farris, and this is Spider-Sember. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Film Talk during our big Spider-Sember extravaganza. 11 films, less than 17 days, one end goal, massive multiverse Spidey boy. So, as always, Hunter, how are you doing, my guy?
I'm even better than I was yesterday.
Well, that is very good. I'm glad to hear that you're doing better.
Yeah, things are good. Just got to submit to a bunch of film festivals. I'm figuring out how to produce a couple scripts of my own sometime soonish, but that can be saved for later.
Oh, that's awesome. It's more than I've been up to. Aside from the script writing part, I've actually earlier today I started writing a new script for the film I just told you about earlier before we started recording. So that has been part of my focus today. But
dude, congratulations! You got to start writing a script.
Well, this isn't even the first one. I've started and not finished more films than more scripts than I have fingers. I can't stay focused on one topic for more than a day.
I didn't say you started writing your first script, and I didn't say you finished. You wrote something, and that's what's important.
Yes, it's very, very important. Let's just hope that I can keep up with this. All right. So on that note, we are going into Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Now, we've both seen it. I saw it, I think, opening weekend. You just saw it recently. Would you like to do the honors of our plot summary for today?
Alrighty, we've got two main plot lines going on here. One is that Venom and Eddie are having relationship struggles because Venom is domestically abusing Eddie while Eddie is starving Venom. And our B plot is that Woody Harrelson's character, Cletus Cassidy, has ingested part of the Venom symbiote mixed with Eddie's blood and becomes a red one, namely Carnage, a bigger, stronger symbiote that has the same thing Riot has about being able to create weapons out of his skin, mostly spikes in this movie, and he wants to reunite with his childhood sweetheart, who has banshee-like screeching powers, and get married to her. I should also point out that Cletus Cassidy is a serial killer. If you didn't know that, you're probably not watching this episode, though.
Oh, we forgot to put a spoiler warning up before we started talking about the plot.
Well, there's your spoiler warning.
Although most of that was revealed in the plot, I guess. So, spoiler warning for the rest of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and honestly other films, because we went into spoilers for other films yesterday. And we didn't even have a spoiler tag for those films.
To be fair, that plot summary is more like, I don't know, a plot summary for a Batman movie where it's Bruce Wayne watches his parents get shot in Crime Alley, and then he grows up to become Batman, and then he fights the Joker.
Right.
That's not really a spoiler. That's kind of just what that's more of the expectations for a movie called Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Kind of like, in the words of Roger Ebert, when you go into a movie titled Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, you expect a mummy, a tomb, and a dragon emperor. You kind of just expect that to happen. It's kind of the opposite of a spoiler.
And then you get the Mummy film with The Rock in it, and that whole thing. Did you know?
I think it was Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Anyway, I haven't seen that one. I shouldn't make that.
Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, the guy's a scorpion. Or I think it was the Mummy, Tomb of the Scorpion King, maybe? Or something. Side tangent related to that, though. There have been 5 Scorpion King films in the Mummy franchise, only one of which had The Rock in it, and they were all prequels.
Yeah, one thing that I find really fascinating about that, I'm sorry, audience, is that, we were still getting Scorpion King movies, which, as a reminder, is a spin-off from the Brendan Fraser Mummy franchise. We were still getting those after the Tom Cruise Mummy reboot happened. which means we had two different Mummy universes going on at the same time. The last Scorpion King movie came out in 2018. The Tom Cruise Mummy movie came out in 2017.
Okay. So I'm pulling up the Wikipedia for the Mummy franchise. Oh my gosh.
You don't want to do
Oh my
like
gosh.
many Mummy movies.
What the crap? Okay.
There have been 5 different franchises titled The Mummy.
No, just we're talking Brendan Fraser Mummy movie.
Okay, that's
Or
a
is
little.
this? Yeah, okay. So there seem to be nope, that's 19 that's the 32 film.
That's
Uh
what I mean about 5 different franchises. So we started with the 32 film, which was a standalone. Then we had a franchise from the 40s to the 50s. I think Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy is its own thing. Then we had a
Mummy
1960s series from Hammer Horror, and then we had maybe it was a 70s series. Then we had a 90s series from Brendan Fraser with the spin-off of the Scorpion King, and then we had Dwayne the Rock, and then we had Tom Cruise's The Mummy from 2017.
Okay, so I want to pull
Yeah,
up
you're
cuz I saw a list of all the mummy like all like that era's mummy movies, like the entire franchise from like the Brendan Fraser universe, and there was like 30 films with like weird names. Let's
Hmm?
see. Oh, where is it? Where is it?
I
1999.
believe there are 6 in that particular run.
Oh, I can't find it. I saw it the other day, which is why I remember it. Um, but I know it was something like you had the Mummy, then you had like the Mummy 2, then you had the Scorpion King franchise, and at one point it was like the Scorpion King was the sequel to a prequel of a prequel to a sequel, which was in and of itself was a prequel to a sequel of a sequel.
That's awesome.
It is. It's insane. And the fact that
That is
they were still coming out
so
with
out
them.
there and going so far with the chronology. Good job them. I do think I know this sounds really stupid. I think it'd be hilarious to do like what's the phrase? A reunion movie for all the different Mummy franchises.
Oh my gosh. That
The only reason why I say that, well, okay, one reason is because there have been 4 different franchises, 5 or 6 if you count it weirdly. But the other reason is because the entire premise of the Mummy franchise is that the villain wants to bring someone back from the dead. That's every Mummy movie. Okay. Actually, I've only seen the Universal classic ones from like the 30s. Okay, so why don't we make it a movie about trying to bring the previous Mummy movie characters back from the dead and gradually succeeding until all of the various Amun-Ra's can bring their powers combined to bring Imhotep back from the dead, as you get like Brendan
yes.
Fraser and Tom Cruise, and I guess you can't really get Abbott and Costello anymore,
I,
but idea.
honestly like that would be awesome, but any film with Tom Cruise is not going to do good, especially in the Mummy franchise because I don't know if you knew this about the original like the Mummy film that he was in, but when they brought him in, he only agreed to do it if he could rewrite the entire script with his own writers. Like the film we
Mm-hmm.
got is like not the same film as what they pitched to him. It was completely changed because he wanted more screen time and to be more of a prominent character in a film about the mummy. And that all that was like a big thing back when that happened, which
Yeah,
kind of confirms my opinion on Tom Cruise, which is he's like a self-interested, egotistical megalomaniac almost, who is really good at acting.
rude. This is like a real person that you're saying that.
I
Imagine
know
if you heard you say that about him. That's rude.
the eh, I don't know. He's very obsessed with himself just based on what I've seen about him. He's an amazing actor. I'll give him that much. Like he's got talent more than I can ever have. But I don't know. I'm not gonna say too much more than that
I
because I
don't.
don't know the guy personally. But just based on what I've
Yeah,
seen,
like I don't know him personally. I can base stuff off of interviews, but that's the persona that he
right?
his publicist for him. I can say stuff based on like what other people have said, but again, that's just spreading rumors. But what I can say is that like this man is dedicated to his
Oh, he
craft
really
like
is.
no one else.
I mean, the man does his own
The fact that
stunts and
this man
all.
is willing to do anything in a Mission Impossible movie just tells you just how dedicated this man is to his craft and how
Right.
dedicated he is to making. I should. Okay, moving on from the Mummy, let's
Well,
get
I
into
just pulled
Venom:
up
Let There
all
Be
the
Carnage.
films.
What do you think was awesome about Venom: Let There Be Carnage? What'd you like about it?
Okay. Okay. I liked the relationship between Eddie and Venom mostly. Uh, just like the last film, I thought it was amazing. Venom, like the design for Venom carried over beautifully into this film, and I think Andy Serkis's direction in this film, if he was given a longer runtime, would have been like incredible. Like Andy Serkis is one of those directors and like filmmakers in general who, if you give him the time and ability, can make a masterpiece. Just look at Planet of the Apes specifically, or his role as Ulysses Claw in the MCU. It's one of my favorite characters in the entire MCU. But
Yeah, he's a
he's a very talented mocap artist and
great actor.
director. I just don't think he was given enough time or material to work with in this film, which really saddens me because I would have loved to see what he would do with like a 2.5 hour Venom movie.
What I'm genuinely impressed about here, this is only his fifth movie.
Really?
Okay, for like
That's
as a
even more
director.
impressive.
Like he over the past 4 years, he directed 4 films: Venom: Let There Be Carnage, Mowgli: Legend of the Jungle, The Empires, which is a TV movie from 2018, and Breathe. That's it. He also directed some cinematics in a video game called Heavenly Sword back in 2007. But like, this dude doesn't have that much experience with directing, and his visuals were really good. His
Well, they
directing
were.
on Harrelson's acting was really good. Yes, I could give also for the acting. It's a collaborative process. The director directs the actor, and the actor acts. That is a collaborative process. The directing on just like making it look gothic, like the entire like Ravencroft aesthetic looks so wonderfully gothic. Like I fully expected Dr. Frankenstein to walk out any minute. Or like fully expected out of Abraham Van Helsing or something like that. Fully expected any second. Um, I also, yeah, I really like the dynamic between Venom and Eddie. It doesn't feel like Venom to me because, again, like I said last time, to me, a lot of what makes it Venom is the caring relationship between the two.
Right.
This was very much a caring relationship between the two. This is a very abusive relationship.
And it does seem a lot more realistic in as real as an alien symbiote living in a human's body can be, but in the sense of they're two completely different species trying to coexist in the same body. They need different things out of life.
Hmm?
They believe different things. Like Venom is obviously a much more physical person in of his nature because just of like what he is and where he comes from. And Eddie needs not that, especially from where he's come from and who he is. Um,
Yeah, it was. So in the previous movie, we had a lot of experiences of like Eddie could choose to be a hero, but intentionally chooses to not be a hero. For example, the convenience store is getting held up, and Eddie chooses to just walk out, which is like, kind of what most of us would do. I'm not
right.
saying that's realistic. I'm saying that we kind of expected him to go be a hero, and instead he just kind of did the normal person thing and minded his own business. And in
Yeah.
this movie, that becomes like a major part of his character, that he's like, I am not a hero. I am a journalist. Stop making me do hero stuff. But the deal that he had with Venom was the only way that you're going to eat is when we're being a superhero. And so Venom is literally starving through the first 30, 45 minutes of the movie while he's actively abusing Eddie verbally, emotionally, domestically, physically, just like straight up abuse. Um, which kind of weirded me out that like Eddie changes his relationship with Venom, but Venom does not change his relationship with Eddie.
Right.
Like we don't see any indication that Venom has changed how he's going to treat Eddie, but we do see an indication that Eddie has definitely changed how he's going to treat Venom. Eddie promises, "I will let you eat more." He gives he gives Venom more opportunity to eat. He stops starving his boyfriend. I wasn't sure. I'm not shying away from the LGBT labels of the film.
Right.
That's canon. That's what it's intended to be.
Right.
Andy Serkis has said on multiple occasions that he was trying to make a homosexual love story. I was just like, wait, is boyfriend the right word?
Is
Or is
Venom even
I
a
think
guy?
partner might be the right word?
Like, do symbiotes have genders? Because just going off of the logic of the last film, which obviously wasn't carried over to this film, Venom takes on the characteristics of whatever host he's in. Now, it was retconned in this
That's
film because uh, I don't know why. That's one thing that I think they should have kept from the last film was he's his like gender fluidity, which even then is like he takes on the characteristics. He doesn't really possess a gender. It doesn't seem. He's just a sentient biomass in his symbiote form. This biomass might not be the right word. Sentient glob
Yeah.
of Play-Doh.
Also in the comics, he takes on whatever gender his host is, and the fact that we keep using the word he is really appropriate for Venom Let There Be Carnage, because within this particular film, Venom is very clearly male presenting, which I think really fits with this particular film, because a lot of the film is about Venom becoming his own person, and
Right.
about Venom exploring who he is as a character outside of Eddie. I mean, a lot of the film is Venom and Eddie broke up. Like most of Act Two, they do once they've broken up with each other. Um, and I think that's part of why Venom. I think that's part of why Venom doesn't take on the attributes of his host in this movie, because about him gaining his own attributes, which I think, as far as this movie is concerned, includes a male presentation, if not a male gender.
Right. And for this movie, that is like that it works very well for this specific movie. However, because it's a sequel to another film, that whole like ditching how they were doing it in the last film comes off as what's the word? What's a good word for it? Not like
Serving the
unpassionate
story.
to like the character so far. Like I thought it worked very well for the story they wanted to tell, but because it's supposed to be connected to Venom 2018, it takes the whole concept and throws it out the window, which is it's kind of like the uh what the last Jedi did with
Oh
the
no.
Force Awakens stuff. It would take one thing set up, throw it out the window. On this, in this case, a much smaller scale of that, and that's something I'm not getting into further than there. Um,
I appreciate you not getting too far into that. I will
um,
say, I think sometimes we as film fans, especially within a blockbuster mindset, seem to treat continuity between films as an end in and of itself. Not an end in and of itself, but as okay. We value immersion above almost anything else when we're in a blockbuster mindset. We have this very Thermian, Watsonian view. Immersion is more important than anything else. If it doesn't work for the story, if it doesn't work for the themes, if it doesn't work for the creator's vision or for the actors or if the stunts look or anything else matter, as long as it's immersive, we kind of have that viewpoint. And part of that is that continuity between installments is more important to us than an idea film. I recognize that that is the perspective that a lot of people go into when it comes to blockbusters. I don't have that perspective. I'm just like,
right.
hey, it serves the movie. I more important than continuity between installments, because I don't think that immersion is that important, frankly. It's not something that I value. I'm not saying that you shouldn't value it. Please value what you value. I am simply saying what I value, and immersion is not one of the things that I
Right.
value. And so I'm not as concerned with like continuity between installments.
And yeah, that definitely makes sense because as we've talked about, everybody's going to have their different opinions when it comes to anything ever. Like there's always going to be differing opinions from you, and you might never find somebody who has the exact same opinions on every small topic. But like for me, as somebody who is invested when it comes, especially when it comes to franchises, If you were just making a one-off film and then you give it a sequel, then something like this I feel is okay. I can look past it. However, when you are attempting to like fit this in with other franchises with their sequels, that's when I believe disregarding past character traits or past plot details or character details can become like either a slippery slope or just downright disrespectful, especially when you've got two different directors. Because when you're trying to like to craft a cinematic universe, like continuity more than anything else is very important, especially when you're trying to take this franchise, this trilogy of films, and this trilogy of films and put them together, but make them have always existed together. If you disregard continuity, for me at least, it makes the final product just a messy timeline, and it eventually like it will for me taint the entire franchise because you didn't take the time to think, okay, what is say what let's say for example you have Iron Man and Captain America. They each get a trilogy, and then you bring them together. And in the second film of each of the franchises, their respective heroes fight their respective villains in New York City on the same day at the same hour. But they were never referenced. They're in the same spots with the same shots with the same buildings in the background. You bring them together and you never reference that, and you say like, "Oh, it always happened." Then the audience can be like, "Well, how is that possible? Because they were both in the same place at the same time. We never saw them. They were never made reference." And that starts to erode the believability and the history of like the connected universe, making it less believable as a connected universe.
In one sense, the very premise of a shared universe is Thermian to some degree,
Right.
because the whole concept of Thermianism is that there is a universe that things, a fictional universe that things happen in, and that the writer is simply communicating what happens in that universe rather than writing what happens in that universe. So yeah, I totally get where that's coming from. It's a very blockbuster mindset. It's very much the standard default mindset that we have when we go into blockbusters, and because of that Thermian nature of shared universes, to me, part of what makes it a cinematic universe is the continuity and the consistency.
Yeah.
That said, I'm also going into this film just being like, you know what? It served the film, it served the story, it served the themes. I'll take it. Good
Right.
enough for me. If it's not completely consistent, I mean, when is anything consistent?
Oh,
I mean,
I
Star
get
Wars
that
films
truly.
films contradict each other all the time. MCU films have contradicted each other on multiple occasions. Saw films contradict each other all the time. The reason why I bring up Saw is because the Saw franchise is so proud of their continuity. They are so obsessed with their own continuity. It's probably like if you pretend that these films are like their own living creature and you ask, "Hey, what's your favorite thing about yourself?" They'd probably be like, the continuity. Like, I feel like these films value continuity over traps. And even those films contradict
Right.
each other all the time. Like, at some point, you kind of just have to be okay with contradiction, or you're gonna hate everything.
Right, and that's yeah. And you don't even have to be okay with it. Like just like understanding like this is a thing that happens. It's gonna happen. It's humans aren't perfect. As long as you like can understand that that's a thing, then yeah, you're much better off when you're watching movies. But one thing I've seen with right,
Accepting contradiction. Maybe
yeah,
not being okay with it, but at least accepting that it is there, accepting the way
right,
the world is,
right,
if not saying that is the way the world ought to be.
right. Now, because like we're humans and we will always make mistakes, there will always be continuity errors. However, I have to give like the MCU and specifically like Kevin Feige and his the directors of all the films in there the highest praise possible because they have been able to go for 28 almost films and TV shows set within the MCU with very little continuity errors. There was that big 8 years later title card thing that was literally just wrong. It was like off by 4 years, but that was Sony. That wasn't Marvel. That was Sony. So it don't count in my book. Now I'm
Yeah, there
kidding
are
on
occasional
that.
continuity errors within the MCU. Yeah, they've done a really good job generally with inter-film continuity.
Right.
Inter-installment continuity, intertextual continuity. I'm not really sure what the word is
I
there.
would say inter-universe continuity. Because at this point, it's not like a bunch of franchises coming together. The MCU is one franchise with a bunch of different films. Because it used to be all these different film franchises coming together, and now it's all the same franchise. Like there's not much distinction between films anymore, which isn't a bad thing, but it's also not the greatest thing. Because I would like to see a little bit more like difference in between MCU films.
Yeah, yeah. And if you use the lens that they're all the same, then you're gonna see how they're all the same. If you use the
Right.
lens that they're all very different, you're gonna see a lot of difference. You're
Oh,
gonna find
definitely.
whatever it is that you look for. I go into it assuming that they are very different, and I do find that.
Oh, right, right.
I just also recognize that if you go in looking for the similarities, I have gone in looking for the similarities in the past. Oh, oh my god.
Right, right.
Anyway, so we were talking about Andy Serkis's directorial efforts. We were talking about the relationship between Venom and Eddie. We were talking about Venom having his own personality and his
Yeah.
own character traits, as opposed to simply being an extension of Eddie. I guess you could say an extension that can disagree. And I do kind of love that, like, they really do disagree for most of the film. Literally, the first time they agree on anything is about 85% of the way through the film.
Right.
Literally every other thing throughout the entire movie they disagree on. I may be exaggerating there.
Ooh, I do have. I want to go back to Venom's like physical identity for a second here because I just thought of something. So in this film we see because what I would have liked to see to within the context would be maybe a line early on in the film where like Eddie and Venom have been bonded so long that Venom's like physical form with Eddie has become his physical form in general. Like it's just become what he looks like now. I would have loved to have that, like even a throwaway line to establish that. That would have like completely taken this one criticism I have of the film, thrown it out the window. But now my question is, what happens if he bonds to a dog and wants to bring out his physical form? Will he look like the dog, or will he look like himself? Because in the original film we saw he would have looked like the dog, but in this one, would this little dog become this massive behemoth, or would it look like a dog?
So I'm gonna answer the question that you actually are asking, and then I'm going to answer the question that I personally think you should be asking.
All right.
Okay. First question. What does Venom look like when he bonds to something that isn't human? I mean, throughout the rave scene, we see very clearly that like Venom has a form.
Yeah.
He has a thing that maybe he chooses to look like that. Maybe he just does look like that. It doesn't really matter. That'll be the next thing. But yeah, I think that if he bonded to like a cat or a mouse or something like that, kind of like he did in the first film, I can't remember what exactly he bonded to. Yeah, I think he would turn into a humanoid behemoth, kind of like he does with everything else that he bonds to. He bonds to the Asian woman. He bonds to somebody at the rave. He bonds with somebody else at the rave and somebody else at the rave, and eventually he just doesn't have a host at all and still looks like the humanoid behemoth.
Wait. When did he not have a host?
There's a brief portion during the rave. At least I interpreted it as he doesn't have a host. Right after he says, I'm coming out of the Eddie closet." The next scene of him has him slumping down against a wall. I interpreted that as him not having a host. In fact, I interpreted most of the rave scene of him not having a host. I may be interpreting it incorrectly, but that's how I interpreted it.
I'm pretty sure in that scene, like he was slumping down because the host that he was inside of was getting sick. Because like I thought that host that he was in was the same one that he dropped at Mrs. Chun's front door before he went into Miss Chun.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Because that would explain
You're
why the guy was slumped over with just like black drool running out of his mouth, which wasn't venom, but he was like that was the venom sickness is what I'm going to call it when someone like gets a symbiote and then that symbiote just completely exhausts them. So let me look up.
I'm not going to pretend that I have any defense for this interpretation. That is how I read the film. I may have
Right.
read it wrong. That is a thing that happens. Let's get into the other question though. Of like the real question here is not what are the rules of the universe, because again that is very much a perspective of immersion, and that is a valid perspective. Let's take a look at the other perspective, at a more anti-Thermian perspective, instead of looking at the rules of the universe, and instead of saying the rules of the universe, say there is no universe. This is a story told by people. The story from their imaginations, and from their experiences, and from their philosophies. What can we get from that? What can we get from the fact that, well, first off, they chose not to use a dog, not to have Venom
Oh,
bond to
right.
a dog.
Yeah, that was a
And
good
so, like,
that was a good choice.
it kind of, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but, like, there's a reason they chose not. They did not choose to include Venom bonding to any animals in this one. But on top of that, I think what matters is the fact that Venom has his own form.
Right.
And the fact that he is exploring what he's like without Eddie, and that becomes one of the main themes of the movie is self-exploration outside of a relationship. Because I hate to he's not, but he is an obligate mutualist, like we mentioned in the last episode. He literally can only survive when bonded to a host, which means that he can really only form his second act of this movie when he's bonded to about 7 different hosts throughout the second act.
Right.
Maybe 10 different hosts throughout the second act. And I perspective that's more useful than inquiring about the minutia of the rules of the universe.
Right. Right. And like definitely now that I've come up with I thought of the idea of maybe he's just been bonded to Eddie for so long that his Eddie form is now his like genetic, his like natural form when he is transformed. Now that like I've thought of that, it lets me appreciate the film a little bit more. My wish though would be if that was the intention that they would have made some reference to it of some kind. Like let's say when Anne finds Venom bonded to Miss Chen, she could have said something like, I see you and Eddie have been spending a lot more time transformed," or something small. It's a little nitpick, I know, but it's just some of the stuff that I think about, especially when it comes to connected films.
What if
It's a good
what if
show.
it's not that Venom and Eddie have bonded for that long? Venom that is Venom's real form. That's just what he looks like. He bonds with Eddie and is comfortable with Eddie, and so he takes on his real form. He bonds with Anne, and he's like, "This is a little different. Maybe I should be doing something else," and takes on a different form. Bonds with, I want to say it was a cat in the first movie.
It was a
Bonds with the
poodle
little
dog.
kid. Was it what?
I think it was either Shih Tzu or a poodle dog.
Yes, it was a tiny little dog.
Yeah.
Yay, we already got a symbiote bonded to a dog. Yay. Um yeah, he bonds with the little kid and takes and is like, "Oh, this is a little different. Maybe I should take on this form." And by the time Let There Be Carnage comes out, he's like, "No, no, no, form. This is what I want to be because this is the real me." It happens to be kind of vaguely Eddie shaped, but let's be honest, that is not Eddie shaped.
Well,
That's not like a big Eddie. That is Venom shaped.
well, even then, like when I bring that up, I'm talking like voice and stuff, and that's what he looks like in Venom. It could very well be that that is his like just his natural look. Um, I personally, I don't think that would be the case. I think I think as a species, he takes on a similar esque, I guess, appearance to whatever host he is inhabiting. But again, I don't know enough. It wasn't explained in the film, so I don't know what Andy Serkis was thinking. Um, not in like what were you thinking, but more of like this was a decision. I don't know what his thought process was on it. I would love to. I would love to sit down with Andy Serkis and ask him. So what was your ideas for Eddie and Venom in this film? But he's not going to talk to someone like me. So
The reason why I bring that up, I fully recognize that theory doesn't actually hold water.
It
Because in the
could.
first movie, we see Venom's true form. It's a pile of goo. In the second movie, we see Venom's true form.
Well,
It's a pile of goo with a face. It's not human. It is possible that he's picked like that he has like a form that he feels most natural in, and that's his, his true self, his most natural self, the one that he doesn't feel like he has to pretend, and that's the form that second act. That is possible. But the reason why I bring up that theory is because it supports the theme that I was presenting of Venom learning to become his own person
yeah.
by saying, I like this form. Let's just stick with this form instead of just becoming who everybody else
Yeah.
is.
And that's definitely a theory. That theory holds as much or as little weight as the theory that I proposed, because in the end, they're all theories made by fans who are trying to figure something out. It
But
doesn't
that's
change
just
my
a theory.
a
That's
film
just a
theory.
theory. A
A
film
film
theory.
theory. We're gonna get sued.
Maybe we should edit that out.
No, I'm kidding. We're not gonna get sued.
Yeah, I seriously doubt that MatPat has that strict of rules.
He would probably be okay with it, to be 100% honest. Matt Pat seems like a cool guy. I would
Possibly.
love I would
I
love
don't
to
know.
meet him. I'd love to have him on the show. That'd be fun. We
Dude,
could
reach
interview
out.
Matt Pat. That'd be fun. Um
um,
all right, so
what did you think of Woody Harrelson?
okay. So, I'm gonna start out by saying that wig he had in the last film was absolute garbage, and I'm glad they got rid of it. Like like
I mean,
that
yeah,
curly haired
I mean,
wig
yeah,
was
I was not a huge fan either. I am also glad that they changed it. But at the same time, like, we don't have to say that it's garbage. I'm
Oh.
kidding.
No, I believe it was garbage. It did not look good at all. It not only looked like a wig, it looked like a wig you buy at like Walmart or something. Um, but in this film, the character of Cletus Cassidy was probably my favorite aspect of the film. His mannerisms, the way that he quoted like old scriptures and like I think it was poetry. I forget what all he quoted. I know that he quoted some scripture, some poetry. I think that was mostly it. Some Shakespeare, and which was is poetry. Um, and his elegance, I guess, when it came to adapting to the Carnage symbiote, he just like he was like, oh, power. Okay, I'm gonna kill you now. And whereas Eddie, it took him a little bit to fully understand how to like coexist with Venom. Cletus was just like, "Oh, you like to kill things too? Awesome! Let's go kill people." Um, and Woody Harrelson is just a treat to see on screen. Like he is, he I don't think he's one of the most talented actors working, but he is a very talented actor, and he does some of the best scenery chewing of any actor working today.
Oh yeah, you could tell that like Woody Harrelson was having making this movie, and he was big and he was over the top, and it was fun to watch him.
He reminded
I,
me
I
of Ultron from Age of Ultron almost, and how I guarantee you James Spader had like a blast voicing Ultron because Ultron is just a fun character in my opinion.
I mean this with no disrespect toward Woody Harrelson because I do think he did a great job. I'm not sure how to phrase this. If
Be
you go
blunt.
look up with Cletus, it's Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover?
Yeah.
Wait, what was the so what were you saying originally? Because it kind of cut out for that.
Oh. If you go look up pictures of Cletus Cassidy from the comics, that's Crispin Glover.
All right.
I'm still cutting out, aren't I?
No, you're not cutting out. I'm seeing I'm seeing side by sides, and at least from more modern comics, Woody Harrelson looks very much like Cletus Cassidy from the comics, unless I'm not seeing who you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm having trouble finding modern pictures, older pictures from like the 80s and the
Oh,
90s, which
who is this guy? Jack Jack Earl Haley. Oh my goodness. So I looked up Cletus Cassidy, just the name, and there a picture popped up of a dude with red hair in like a brown trench coat and like a green dress shirt and tie, and he looks almost identical to Cletus Cassidy from the comics, even more so than I think Woody Harrelson does.
what was the name you said?
It is Jackie Earl Haley, Earle, or Early, or something like that.
Who you're talking about is the guy who played Freddy Krueger.
Really? Really? That is cool. I mean, it would make sense, I guess.
Or at least he is one of the actors behind Freddy Krueger. And yeah, oh my gosh, he would have nailed this role, though he is a little too old at this point. He's like in his 50s or 60s at this point. Of course, Woody Harrelson probably is too, but like... Anyway, like, I spent the entire movie being like, I wonder what Crispin Glover would have been like in this.
Watchmen movie. Okay. So I just had a thought. Who played Rorschach in the 2009 Watchmen film? Who played Rorschach?
That's Jackie Earle. That's Jackie Earle.
That explains why I've seen him from something. As soon as I saw his picture, I saw an image of him in prison, and I didn't know what it was from. And now I can picture the scene vividly in my mind. It was the whole It was the whole like, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Just that. Okay, that explains where I saw him.
I want to retract an earlier statement.
Okay.
Jackie Earle Haley has not played Freddy Krueger. He was in talks to play Freddy Krueger in a 2020's Nightmare on Elm Street reboot.
Which never came out. Well, it might have come out. I just never heard of it.
Appears to not be rebooting at this point. Oh no, it just like never happened.
Okay. So that makes sense. But he would definitely be a good Freddy Krueger. He would have been a good Venom, even not Venom, Carnage. Which, that's funny. Okay. Now, so okay, let's move on to the Carnage symbiote itself. So we've established that Woody Harrelson is a treasure to have in this film. What's your thoughts about the Carnage, just as the character?
It looks perfect.
That's where I have a different opinion, but I'll let you talk about Carnage first. I want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll talk about my take on Carnage.
Okay. To me, Carnage actually does have more black in his character design. Like when I imagine Carnage, I imagine red with black veins throughout the character design. And they didn't have the black veins. That's just what I imagine. I'm not saying that like they did Carnage wrong. Right. I'm just saying that it wasn't what I imagined. But other than the black veins, like his character design looked perfect to me. Also, like as for like what Carnage is in my mind, it's mostly from the 2000 Spider-Man video game. I love that game. I played it so much as a kid. So like I'm thinking back to like Carnage from that game and being like, okay, sure, he sounds different. Okay, sure, he's a little less erratic, he's a little less spastic. Like in this version, Carnage seems to have a lot less agency. The main thing that I can think of, that like Carnage and Cletus are kind of in the same spot as Venom and Eddie are in the first film. It's just that like they're much more in agreement on what they're going to do. Be much of his own character. That's not a criticism. It is an observation. He seems to be more of an extension of Cletus, right up until the end when Carnage and Cletus start to disagree. I'm not
Right.
saying that disagreement is what causes agency. I'm just like, hey, this is a thing that I observed that didn't seem to have as much of a dynamic, as much of a back and forth as, say, Venom and Eddie did.
Right, right. And yeah, so that is definitely a take. It's a good take. All takes are good. Um, Mine is different, slightly at least. So I'll get all the stuff I liked out of the way first. I loved like how they realized like his ability to turn his body into blades and stuff. I thought that was so well done. It was beautiful. The way that like when what's his name? Cletus was breaking Shriek out of prison, and he wrapped the tentacles around the box and crushed it. I thought that was incredible. Um, it looks too orange for me though. Like the character design, like they only showed Carnage at night, and I thought it looked way too orange. Because when I think of Venom, not Venom, when I think of Carnage, I think bright red, like up the saturation. It's just like it's an unnatural red color, because that's how he was drawn originally in the comics. Because you had to have more higher saturation because of the types of paper that was being printed on in those days. Um, which I get, like in a real life setting, you have to tone the colors back a little bit, but he's an alien. So I wish he was more red. He was way too orange. And I don't feel like he was a character as much as a plot point, because like he didn't get much development in the film. And that's on like maybe I didn't connect with the development enough. Maybe it was there, it just wasn't as much as I wished was there. Or it could be that there was just no development for the character aside from what was necessary to move the plot forward, which can be fine. It's just I don't know. It didn't work perfectly with me, in all honesty. The way that, even though I don't think Venom is truly Venom, I still think that his character was developed very, very well. Carnage doesn't hit either box for me, aside from the amazing tentacles. Like those are amazing, and like the spikes and
I
stuff.
do I do kind of love that. Okay, so when we watched Venom, I saw what Riot can do, and I was like, that's Carnage. Like one of the things that makes him Carnage to me is his ability to turn his body into to turn his tentacles into blades. And then I was like, okay, so what are they going to do that makes Carnage different? And they said we're going to focus on the tentacles. Like we're going to have lots of wrapping around. We're going to have him expand in size. We're going to have him be the size of a clock tower at one point, which I think would have been real. I'm not saying this is like something that would have been cool if like Carnage spread throughout the city.
Ooh. No, I am saying that would
See
have been cool.
like just see tentacles wrapping around the Golden Gate Bridge, see tentacles going down that one windy street in San Francisco,
Oh,
see tentacles wrapping
yes.
around Anne's house and going through Anne's apartment or going through Eddie's apartment. Just like tentacles all over the city because apparently he can get pretty big, and I feel like that would have really upped the stakes. That said, the stakes here are much more personal and much more relational, not nearly as world ending or as life threatening. Like the stakes here are two people,
Mm,
but those two people are very important to Eddie.
right.
Also, the stakes are that Cletus is a serial killer.
Right, and he's bonded to a symbiote that's literally insane.
Yep.
Which is another thing. Like the fact that Cletus is a blood fusion with Carnage. And I think Game Theory did an entire video on this. Cletus and Carnage are bonded via blood, whereas Eddie and Venom are bonded via the nervous system. That innately makes Carnage and Cletus's bond stronger than Venom and Eddie's, for some reason that he got into in the film. In his film theory, I'm not even going to try and explain it because I will botch the whole thing. Um, and that was sort of brought up when Venom like disappeared into Eddie during the final fight and was like, "Oh crap, it's a red one." But it was never explained why that scared Venom. It was used more as a joke at Venom's expense than any indication of how powerful Carnage is. Like, yes, like he's powerful enough to scare Venom, but why is him being red that terrifying? Now we can infer that it's because of the blood bond, but that's never mentioned in the film. That has to be like that has to be something that we think of after the film, which I don't know. It's something that I think you should explain at one point, even if it's just a throwaway line.
I think once again it comes down to a question of like immersion versus anti-Thermianism. I should explain what that is sometime, but I don't want to
Here's what we'll
episode.
do.
Um,
Real quick. If I can remember during the editing process, I will put in a fact screen, and it'll be a definition of the word whatever it is you just said, so that our listeners can know what it
no worries.
means.
The point is that it is a different perspective. That's why I'm choosing
Okay.
to not define it, because the definition doesn't matter. The point is that it's a different perspective.
Gotcha.
Like, yeah, from an immersive perspective, and from a very blockbuster fanboy perspective, where we want to get the full details of a wiki article included in the movie, yeah, that's something that we want. That's something that we kind of expect. From a different perspective, we could say, yeah, look at when that line happens. We're like well into barely starting in Act 3 by the time that line happens. They're not trying to establish anything anymore. That's not the point.
Right.
If that line had happened at the beginning of Act 1, halfway through Act 1 or something like that, I would have been like, okay, yeah, you're trying to establish something, because that's when you establish things. Act 3 is not the time to establish things. So they didn't establish anything. They made the joke. They showed that Venom is scared of Carnage because of how big and scary he is, and they represented that through he's a red one, and I'm like, that's good enough.
Right.
Also, I went into it knowing that they never explained that. Somebody told me. So it was a whole lot easier for me to just be like, okay, cool. They never explained it. I'm good.
Now, though, like that is that's definitely a way to watch like to view the whole thing. My question is though, like, would it have been like would it have been too expositional if like during that scene, Eddie like a Venom retracts like crap, it's a red one, and Eddie's like what do you mean? And then Venom just says blood bond like blood bond makes them much stronger than us, and then we could have the scene go on from there. It's like an extra 2 lines of dialogue explaining why he's terrified and what makes Carnage that much more of a threat. And I don't think it would take away from anything really. Then again, I'm not a professional film writer. I'm just an idiot who lives in at his parents' house talking about films with his friend online because he has no life.
I think there's absolutely a way, a form of execution for that scene, done it in a way that wouldn't detract from the point of the scene. Absolutely could have. I just don't think that was the perspective that the filmmakers were using. That is a guess. On a completely different topic, I have a question about race, and I feel like I shouldn't be asking a white guy about this because I am also a white guy.
Right.
Have you seen what Francis Barrison looks like in the comics?
Francis Barrison. Are we talking Screech?
Yeah. Shriek, Naomi Harrison's character.
I don't think so. Let me look her up real quick.
So, for anybody who isn't watching the video, it's a very pale face, like straight white, not Caucasian, white. And she's got this black scar going over her eye, this black mark over her eye, almost a Zuko kind of vibe,
or a Domino.
Exactly. She looks like Domino from the comics. Like they look very similar. Not that they could be twins or anything. The same idea of straight white face, black mark over their left eye. The reason why I bring this up is because both of them were casted as black actresses in their movies.
Right.
Kind of curious, just as a curiosity, I should probably just bring this up on TikTok because I know a lot more people there who will be able to answer this question from much more nuanced and personal perspective of why there is a starting trend of straight white, pale characters, not like straight white as in heterosexual white, but
Right.
like white, pale characters with a black mark over their eye being casted as black. I don't know.
So
I
I
should have
have.
brought that up.
Oh no, it's all good. It's a conversation that we can have. Um, Personally, I didn't think too much of it. There's two possible options in something like this. The first one, which is the one I think is more likely, they just wanted to cast Naomi Harris in the role, and same
And I
with
don't
Domino. And
nailed it.
oh, exactly. And it's like they're just like, okay, so in the comics she's white with a black mark. We want to cast this colored actress. Let's just make the mark white instead of black, and then boom, it's the same character, just reversed colors. There is a second possibility there. Well, there's more possibilities, but like the two biggest that I can think of is it's an intentional race swap from the comics where the creators are like, okay, that's a white character in the comics, we have to make them black in the film for some reason. I don't know how likely that is, but I also like to see the best in people and think that their intention was not to just change, and it was, she's an incredible actress, we're gonna get her, we'll change the character to fit, because that's how I think that casting should work. Is if you're the right fit for the role, it shouldn't matter what color you are, unless the skin tone comes into play with the character's story. Like if you were to cast a white person to play Black Panther, no matter how good that person is, it's going to detract from the story. Those are the scenarios where the character needs to be a specific race, like that. Steve Rogers, not Captain America, but Steve Rogers, born in the 40s, raised up in that era. I think Steve Rogers has to be white. Captain America can be any ethnicity and should be any ethnicity as long as the actor is the right role. Like Sam Wilson, I am so ready for his next movie as the Falcon because he's an incredible character, and I am so excited to see what he does as Captain America.
I
But that's
also
just
think
my
it would have been
take.
so. A lot of people have said that Steve Rogers has to be white. I'm with you. I also think it would have been really interesting to make Steve Rogers canonically Jewish.
Oh, that would have been. Hang on.
But
I think
wouldn't it
I.
be the only because
Hang on.
in the comics, Steve is at least Jewish coded, if not canonically Jewish. But also in the MCU, Kate Bishop is canonically Jewish.
Let's see real quick. So I'm gonna look this up. Chris reveal, explain Jack Kirby, Jess Simon.
If you want more of a deep dive on this, look up at Rabbi Comics on TikTok. She has great dives into why certain comic characters are definitely Jewish, why Steve Rogers or Peter Parker
Right.
or I want to say she said that Superman is canonically Jewish, but I may be misremembering that. And part of
Superman
it
is
is
canonically Kryptonian.
yeah, why I'm saying remembering. Anyway,
I get what you're talking about.
where was I?
So what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking on the Steve Rogers thing is, it would have been a much like. I think it would have been better. Like I think that they're saying that he was like supposed to be Jewish in the comics specifically because of his creators. But how cool would it be if they made him German? And his whole character arc is he is a German man fighting against the German Nazis to protect the people that the Germans do not like. Like it's I don't know. I think that would have been a really nuanced thing to have in the comics, as he is of the same race as the enemies in World War II, but he's not letting that define who he protects and who he is. He's letting his moral beliefs and his love for like humanity project forward. Now I don't
That
know
would
if
have been really interesting. For context, for anybody who hasn't gone and looked up Rabbi Comics on TikTok, please go look up Rabbi Comics on
oh,
TikTok
definitely.
real quick. Steve Rogers' creators are both Jewish.
Yeah.
His first appearance was punching out Hitler. There is a very valid interpretation that Steve Rogers was intentionally created to be almost a Jewish power fantasy or a Jewish um, anger fantasy of like getting back at revenge fantasy, but more specifically, a golem.
Hmm.
being that Steve Rogers is a golem, that he is a Jewish mythical creature. I don't really know much about golems. Again, go look her up. That he was created to protect Jewish people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
there's that tangent about Steve Rogers being Jewish. But yeah, I absolutely agree. There are some characters who need to be white. Scott Pilgrim must be white. You cannot make Scott Pilgrim any other race.
Right.
Peter Griffin must be white. So many episodes are about Peter Griffin culturally appropriating, to the point that Peter Griffin was once canonically established to be black. And the entire joke of the episode was that he's culturally appropriate, even though he's canonically black.
Did he become a lizard at one point in the show?
Honestly, like
I think he did.
In my experience, the main plotline of any family is Peter tries to appropriate somebody else's culture. It may not be a racial culture, but it will be a culture. He might appropriate the culture of people with mustaches. He might appropriate the culture of people with a toothpick in their mouth. He might appropriate the culture of people who wear vests, but he will appropriate somebody else's culture. And because of that, he has to be white. You can't make him any other race, because that's the entire joke of the character, at least in my experience with Family Guy. Haven't watched that much Family Guy. Somebody's going to probably hate on this podcast because of that. Unfortunately, I can't read the comments of the show. That was really rude of me to say. Anyway, but yes.
Yes. Leave me all the hate comments to read. Bring it on. I can handle it.
Okay.
On this topic, though, I did want to bring up one more thing. And this is on the topic of Spider-Man, because that's been going around recently. Spider-Man, I think...
Why?
I don't know. It's been on my Twitter a lot recently, of Spider-Man's ethnicity. And there's a lot of people...
I feel like it's like the time of year to argue about Spider-Man. Wait, that's all time. I hear people talk about Spider-Man all times of year. I'm on film Twitter. I see a lot of people arguing over who's the correct Spider-Man. And I'm like, you're all correct in different ways.
I'm just on Spider-Man Twitter right now because, like, I made a Twitter account recently, because I've made, like, several over the past, and I've just decided to make a new one. And the only two people that I follow are Tim Pool and the Spider-Man No Way Home official Twitter page. But there's a lot of people going around. There's a lot of different opinions. I fall under the belief that the character of Peter Parker needs to be a white teen male from Queens, but the character of Spider-Man can be anyone. Doesn't matter who you are, what race, what city, what gender, it doesn't matter. Because Peter Parker is the human, but Spider-Man is the symbol. And the symbol, much like Captain America, should and can be worn by anybody who picks it up and who, like, I guess, who gets the great power. Which is why I like Miles Morales as a character, and I'm glad that they didn't just make him Black Peter Parker. He is his own distinct character with his own distinct character struggles that stem back to his race and his ethnicity and his background. Because if they just did a palette swap of Peter Parker, that's not interesting. Like, you know what I mean?
I absolutely agree. I love it when Spider-Man acts as a symbol rather than as a character. Well, not rather than as a character, but I love it when Spider-Man acts as a symbol, kind of like Captain America. We're going to talk about this a lot more in Amazing Spider-Man 2 and in Spider-Verse. I'm going to give the hot take. V for Vendetta did that idea better than any Spider-Man movie has yet.
I have not
seen saying that no Spider-Man movie has done it, but, like, V for Vendetta did it so well right near the end.
I have to watch that
during Act 3. What's that?
I have to watch V from Vendetta. I've never seen it.
Oh, it is so, like, it's the Wachowskis making Sin City. Who would not like this movie? It is so cool. It also glorifies some kind of bad things, but, like, I enjoy the process of cinematic glorification. Anyway, so no, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers here, but the short version is near the end in Act 3, V mails everybody in England, well, mails 300 people a Guy Fawkes mask. It has like 300 people wearing a V for Vendetta outfit, cascading on the Capitol. And And I think it'd be so cool to see that kind of scene happen in like Spider-Man or Captain America, where like an army of Captains America descend upon the villain as we see that no, really, Captain America has become a symbol of hope and everybody wants to be Captain America.
I like that. I do. I like that. I want to see a scene not in Spider-Man No Way Home, but the end of the next trilogy, where Spider-Man is fighting whatever villain that he's in the middle of fighting, and he's on his last like he's on the ground. The villain's standing over top of him, and the villain gets hit in the head with a lead pipe, and it pans up, and we see an army of people with Spider-Man like shirts or hats and something, and you get one guy, a returning actor, who says one line: "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us." The same guy from the original Spider-Man film, that threw the lead pipe. That's not only fan service, but that also fits with like what you were saying about Spider-Man, the symbol, and all the people who take up the Spider-Man mantle to protect their city's protector. I
The
think that
Spider
would
Mantle.
be the Spider Mantle. Yes. Um. Oh, did you know?
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was
I would
a.
absolutely love to see that kind of thing happen. Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Verse both hinted at that and started to do that idea. Oh my gosh. I actually would if Toby and Andrew appear in No Way Home,
Okay.
I would love to see that kind of scene in No Way Home. An army of spiders.
Ooh,
Not
that'd
an
be
army of
cool.
spiders from different universes, but an army of New Yorkers who have gone from hating Spider-Man because he killed Mysterio, to loving Spider-Man and wanting to become Spider-Man and siding with Spider-Man. I think that'd be a really cool climax in No Way Home. They're not going to do that. There's no way they're going
They
to
have to do that. If they
do
don't
that.
do it, I'm rioting. If they don't do that, I riot. That is
The entire point of the scene is a riot.
that is such a good idea. Oh my gosh. Oh, that would be, even if it was just like Spider-Man from different universes, like we get our main three, and then like at the last minute, like in the trailer, we see Doctor Strange saying like they're coming through and I can't stop them. I Now that you mentioned this, I kind of interpret that as villains just in general, like not just the villains we see, but like an army of villains are coming through, and we get that scene like in Avengers Endgame where it's just an army of like bad guys just lined up, and like they're all there, they're ready to fight Spider-Man, and then we get the portal scene where all the other Spider-Men come through, and we don't know who any of these people are. We just know they are Spider-Man from every possible universe, and we get a spider showdown. Would it detract from the point of the scene? Absolutely. Would I lose my crap if that happened? Yes.
So Tom
Yes.
Holland did say that No Way Home is essentially Spider-Man Endgame.
I did hear that, yes.
And that definitely fits with the idea of Spider-Man Endgame, if I may.
You may?
So I know that we had a movie titled Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We sometimes call that movie Spider-Verse.
Right.
It is not Spider-Verse.
Oh, no, it's
That
not.
is simply a misleading title. If you go look at the Spider-Verse comic,
Oh.
there are 40 different spiders who die. That's just the ones who there are about 100 different spiders in that comic.
So here's my question about No Way Home. Knowing that, do you think we're going to lose a Spider-Man? If they appear, do you think we're going to lose one in this film, and who do you think it's going to be? Because I have my opinion. I think I know who it would be.
I would really like to lose a Spider-Man in this film. I think it would fit very well with the tone. I think it would fit very well with the themes of Peter having consequences and not being able to save everybody. I would love to see it either be Toby or Andrew. I don't really care which one. I think it'd be really cool to. I don't think this is the time to kill Tom Holland.
Oh no, no, no.
Partly because they just announced a new trilogy with Tom Holland.
Exactly. Um,
But like I think it'd fit movie.
right. Now
Go
I do have an entire so this is my idea for it. So, and I've been advocating this since the begin like the first time I heard the rumors that these guys could be in the film. I want Tobey Maguire to be Uncle Ben in the MCU. I want him to be the actor who would have played Uncle Ben if he appeared in the MCU because I want there to be a scene where Tobey comes through the portal and you see Tom Holland look at Tobey's Spider-Man and you see like his face just goes completely white and then he starts to like break down because like he's now seeing his uncle standing before him and they have a touching moment when they first meet and then they fight side by side and we get Tobey like giving Tom like pep talks and stuff and teaching him like this is how you be Spider-Man and because he's the face of Uncle Ben, Tom is like taking everything in because he doesn't know how much time he's gonna have. And in the climax of the film, Tom is on on his knees on his last rope. He's about to like get hit by like a fatal blow from Electro or something, or from Doc Ock, and Tobey jumps in front of Tom and takes the blow for him. And we get a reverse of what we saw in Infinity War, where instead of Tom being the one who's dying, we see it's Tobey, and Tom is cradling Tobey as he's going, and Tom gets like he sees what is Uncle Ben dying in front of him again, but this time he's been able to work through his grief, and he's able to let it like come in and not be like another burden. Like it's sort of like a second chance, I guess. Because we could then establish like we could say he never got to say goodbye to his uncle, and this could be the scene where he finally gets to say goodbye to his uncle, and that could be the end of Tobey's story, but also like give more depth to Peter's relationship with Uncle Ben, and I am starting to cry already.
I think that would work really well.
Oh, I don't
Yeah,
know why
I think that
I'm
would
so
work really
emotional.
well. I don't except that like they did kind of play with a similar idea in Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, they did, but at the same time, it's a very, very important part of the Peter Parker character or Spider-Man in general. Um, I don't know. I just think it would be a touching moment to get to have, like, to let Peter have some time to learn from Uncle Ben, and then in the end, he gets that goodbye that I would like to say in this universe he never got. Uh, and this time it could be not because he was neglectful and the criminal got past him, but because or like maybe Tom was gonna sacrifice himself for like MJ, and Tobey stepped in and sacrificed himself for that. So it takes the pressure of Tom made it happen, and instead this was a deliberate act to save me, and I think that would mean so much. Um, and do I think it's gonna happen? Probably not. I don't know. Would I like it to? Yes. I also don't know how it would affect the rest of the film, but I think it would be a touching scene at least.
I kind of want a Spider-Verse movie. I know that sounds really weird to say in the era of Into the Spider-Verse and in the era of No Way Home and everybody fully expecting it to be a Spider-Verse movie and it having at least multiverse. I want a movie that is based on the Spider-Verse comic.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Now,
Sure, I want it to be well done. I just think that like the concept of Spider-Verse would be really cool.
I think personally that's what Into the Spider-Verse is starting. Like I think that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a start of it's not the entire Spider-Verse cuz we're getting Spider-Verse 2. I think that's just the first issue. And we're going to get more of the story with more Spider-Men and more like big multi-dimensional crossover battles from future sequels and spin-offs and stuff. I think that is what they're going towards. So I wouldn't count them out just yet. Cuz I
Okay.
think it takes a long time for these things to get made.
I should clarify what on earth I mean by that statement.
Okay.
I want a movie where, oh gosh, what was her name? I
Cindy
want
Moon?
a movie where
Oh, Madam Web.
Morlun and Madame Web try to kill all the totems.
Oh,
That's what I mean.
that
Like
could
I
be
want the
coming, if we're being honest.
premise and plot to happen in a movie because I think that'd be cool, because I think that like going all the way into like showing the other and showing and making Morlun a main character and all sorts of weird stuff like that could be a really interesting gothic horror approach to Spider-Man. And because it gives you once you bring in Morlun, Madame Web, and the other, you have automatically shown, okay, we are doing everything, we are going all out, we are going to have we're spider, we're gonna have Spider's Man, we are going to have all of the incredibly weird ones that we possibly can even think of.
So I think, and this is personally like going off of what I said, I thought we were gonna get, which is like it basically like comic issues. Like we got the beginning of the story now. We got the end credit scene that introduces not Nikhil Harris. Nikhil Harris, what's his name?
Miguel O'Hara.
Miguel O'Hara. Thank you. I spaced on that. We introduce
He's one of
him
my favorites.
as well as the '66 Spider-Man cartoon as canon to the Spider-Verse, which means like they're expanding, and I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet money that they are going to be leading up to an actual comic accurate Spider-Verse film. And I would like to say that it's going to be set up in the post-credit scene of Spider-Verse 2. Like how we got the introduce of Spider-Man 2099 and Spider-Man 66. I think we're going to get Morlun, even if just a brief cameo in the end credit scene. I think we're going to get that set up starting in this sequel. Now, will it be the next film? Probably not. We'll probably get more set up then, and it'll probably be fifth, maybe sixth film in the franchise because of how important it is and how big it is. But I'm willing to bet we're going to get some reference to Madame Web or Morlun or the other, or even just the mention of a totem. If they just say the spider totem, then that's going to have been some setup towards the Spider-Verse story. So I'm willing to bet. I am. I truly am.
Sweet. Alrighty, anything else that you want to discuss about Venom Let There Be Carnage? We have been talking for almost as long as the movie exists.
oh,
Almost the entirety of the movie's runtime.
uh, yeah, that's something I would like to bring up. The run, there was not enough movie. It was way too short, in my opinion. There should have been at least half an hour more movie, if not an hour more. Because most modern day comic book movies are between 2 hours and 2.5 hours. That's what we come to expect. And then you got a 90-minute movie, and it's like, this don't feel like a superhero movie anymore.
Yeah, the runtime has become part of the genre expectations of superhero blockbusters. And so we got to the church fight, and I was like, okay, we're about an hour and a half into this film. This is probably about the midpoint climax. Maybe they'll make Act 2 a little short climax, but this feels more like a midpoint climax. And then I realized, oh, this is a 97-minute movie. That's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the same thing I had with this. Like this to me felt like the complete polar opposite of Dune. Like whereas Dune, we got to a point where it's like, okay, when is the climax going to be? This film was like, okay, uh, is this really the midpoint? Well, actually, it's in the same boat as Dune, if we're being honest. But it's like we got to the church scene, and we had Venom and Carnage had not interacted at all earlier on in the film, which I really drew down the tension almost, because you always in most superhero films, and this is I know this is standard. Basically, just
It's
this
part of
is
the genre expectations, and
right.
genre expectations are useful.
Right, and it's part of the core is that you get that middle fight in the middle of the film where the hero and the villain meet each other for the first time, and the hero gets completely bodied by the villain, and then they spend the rest of the film building up the strength and courage to go back out and take out the villain. And in this case, we don't get that. It's just one confrontation between Venom and Carnage, and then Venom eats Carnage. He eats them,
Yep. Yep.
completely wiping out all ability to have a maximum Carnage storyline. And it infuriates me to no end because Maximum Carnage is so freaking good. Like, the whole point of the story is Carnage is literally taking over the minds of the homeless in New York, and like turning them into his own cult. You get the Cult of Carnage, you get the Church of Carnage, you get this entire thing where like the entire homeless population of New York is now fighting against Venom because they're under Carnage's control, and Carnage is like uber powerful, and we don't get that now because they made him. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
I think that's definitely not the movie they were aiming for here, and maybe we can say, yeah, that's the movie that we wanted.
Right.
I will say, it look, it was kind of nice to see a movie with this tight, efficient storytelling where they were like, we're in, we're out, we're done.
Right.
And I think, as an alternative perspective, that most of Act Two is three different storylines that don't have to have Venom and Carnage interacting.
Right.
Like, it's about Eddie learning to be on his own without Venom. It's about Venom learning to be on his own. It's about Carnage setting up the stakes so that Venom and Eddie have to get back together.
Right. And
Oh gosh,
that's definitely a good that's a good perspective. I don't know. I guess like call me the pessimistic one of the group because that's really what I am. Of the two of us, I am the pessimist. Um, but like there is definitely superhero stories where this shorter runtime and more tight, neat storytelling can work. I don't think this one is one of those films that should have had that tight of a storyline, just because of the scale of the characters they were trying to transport onto the big screen and the story they were trying to tell. I think this one would have benefited specifically from a longer runtime and a lot more Carnage, specifically, and more character development for Carnage. But there are definitely superhero films that you can get away with a 90-minute runtime for. I just don't think this one was one of them, personally.
I'm with you. I'm with you. There was another one. Right. I cannot believe that we never talked about this. Let's talk about the post-credit scene.
Oh, that's right. We forgot about that. Oh, baby. Okay. Here.
I literally screamed in the theater like I was at a football match and being like, "Yes!"
I did the same, and my dad looked at me. He's like, "You idiot." Oh, like in recent years, I have found my passion for theaters again, like my passion for movies. Um, and that post credit scene. And so, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, those whoever hasn't seen the film, or heaven forbid you left the theater before the post credit scene, have you never watched a Marvel movie before?
And somehow you spoiled for you already.
That too. That too.
Like, my brother hasn't watched Let There Be Carnage. He just looked up the post-credit scene.
That hurts me physically.
He likes post-credit scenes. He likes crossovers. He likes multiverses. I'm like, dude, go ahead. I know you won't enjoy Let There Be Carnage. Please enjoy the post-credit scene.
I don't know why that hurts me. It's not even my brother. But for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, in the post-credit scene of Let There Be Carnage, the second post-credit scene, Eddie and Venom are in what looked like a hotel room, or it could have been Eddie's apartment. I don't know which one. I think it was a hotel room. And they were talking about Venom's like existence and the fact that he's a hive mind with all the other Clintarians, and that like he has knowledge of thousands of species. And Eddie asks why he has never shared it. Venom's like, if I shared it, it would destroy your mind and send you into madness. And he's like, well, why can't you give me a little snippet? And Venom's like, oh, okay. And then right before Venom is about to let Eddie in on a little bit of everything that he knows, there's a bright light that flashes outside the window. And then the room around Venom and Eddie begins to shift. almost like the shifting we saw in WandaVision, but it shifts into a tropical beach hut. And on the screen, which was playing like some movie or something, it was that now switched to a news broadcast from dailywire.net. And on that newscast, we saw Tom Holland's Peter Parker being badmouthed by J. Jonah Jameson, because who else would be talking about Spider-Man on the news? Um, and then we get a weird scene of Venom licking Tom Holland's picture on the screen, which, very, very strange.
For clarification, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a jerk. You said Daily Wire?
I said, oh, thank you for letting me know. I meant dailybugle.net. Just imagine just Ben Shapiro's on the screen, just like, Spider-Man is a menace. He is a menace. He has to be taken out of the city. He is absolutely the worst.
But I actually want to see that.
I would love to see that.
See Ben Shapiro slandering Spider-Man, because I think Ben Shapiro's talking style would do a really good job with that. That'd be really entertaining.
No, I would like to see a debate between Ben Shapiro, who is on Spider-Man's side, and J. Jonah Jameson, who is not on Spider-Man's side, because then you get the harsh, brash J. Jonah Jameson, just like, Spider-Man is a menace. He must be taken out. And Ben just like, Now, Jameson, we need to talk about this. We need to communicate. We need to have a conversation about what Spider-Man has done for the city, what he might have accidentally not done for the city. But I think, personally, I think that Spider-Man is a good asset to the city. I can't do that voice for very long.
J. Jonah Jameson arguing with Joe Rogan.
No, Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the dailybugle.net is like the InfoWars of the MCU at this point.
Honestly, yes. Like, it was a respected newspaper in the Raimi film. It's not in this version, and I think it's a hilarious take. Also, I love the metatextual implications of that post-credit scene, because one, I don't think Venom's actually appearing in No Way Home. I don't think Tom Hardy's been signed on, at least it hasn't been announced.
Well, the strange thing about that is he has a production hat for the film. So I'm thinking we're going to get a post-credit scene of, and this, I've said this before, I think either at the very end of the film or in a post-credit scene, Eddie and Venom are going to meet Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and Venom is going to be transmuted onto Spider-Man. Oh. And I think that's how the film is going to end, with Venom leaving Eddie for Spider-Man. I would like to see that ending. I don't know how they would contextualize it with the whole like previous film, but that Venom licking Spider-Man on the screen kind of makes me think that that's where they're going with this whole thing, which once again would give him a big white spider on his chest, and that's all I want.
So, the reason why I love the metatextual implications of this is that you might remember back in 2018 when Venom came out, Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal could not agree on whether it was set in the MCU or not.
That was hilarious. That whole campaign trail was hilarious.
Like, Amy Pascal kept saying it was, Kevin Feige kept saying it wasn't. Eventually, Amy Pascal said it is in the same universe as Spider-Man Homecoming, but not in the rest of the MCU, and everyone's like, Spider-Man Homecoming is inextricably linked to the MCU. That's one of the strengths of the film, that it's the first time that Spider-Man is in the same universe as everybody else, so let's lean into it. Let's make it completely inextricably linked to the rest of the MCU. You can't have a movie that is in the same universe as one, but not in the same universe as the other. And so this movie comes out, and it feels to me like Amy Pascal saying, fine, he's in the MCU, whether you want him to be or not. You can use him, you cannot use him, but he is now in the MCU.
Yeah, that whole thing was amazing with Amy Pascal being like, he's definitely in the MCU, and then you see Kevin Feige over in the corner just like he has some of the best facial expressions in interviews, because he's just not amused.
Yeah, I mostly just find the metatextual implications of that post-credit scene hilarious because of that whole campaign and that whole debacle.
Right.
Um, Anything else you want to talk about the post-credit scene?
No, not really. I did think of one thing. Like, so I was thinking about the themes of Let There Be Carnage in comparison to the themes of Venom, the 2018 film, and what the theme would be if Venom left Eddie for Spider-Man at the end of No Way Home. And so the way that I'm thinking about this now is Venom 2018 was the origin story, like the romance story of Venom and Eddie, like finding each other, getting to know each other, and in the end of the film, becoming a couple. Let There Be Carnage was them realizing all of the faults of one another. In this case, literally physical and emotional abuse. Hence the scene where Venom breaks Eddie's nose, heals him, and then breaks it again. And then that results in the two of them splitting up. But then they get back together and they haven't resolved all that much. They've resolved a little bit. Like, Eddie has resolved a lot. But Venom is like that boyfriend who doesn't want to change but expects you to, almost, in a way. And I want to then see, because then that would lead very beautifully into Venom being the kind of person to leave you for someone better within an instant. And I think that's what we're going to see. He leaves Eddie for Spider-Man. Peter rejects Venom, and Venom comes back to Eddie after feeling that rejection and like understanding, like, Eddie really cares for me, and I've been treating him like crap. So I need to be better for Eddie because there's no one better for me than him. And I think that's where this is going. Hopefully, that's where this is going, because that for me would really make a very good theme, not just for a Venom film, but in general. The theme of you need to change for the people that you care about, not expect them to change for you.
Yeah, I think that would be a great way to complete Venom's character arc.
And really,
Um,
I do want to see a Venom film called Venom Lethal Protector, because they dropped that name so often in this film.
that would be cool.
And I think that's all that I have for this film today. Do you have any final statements?
Thanks so much for listening.
All right. As he said, thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Socials are down below, and definitely stick around, because next up on the docket is the original, the pioneer of the superhero, like, renaissance almost that we know of today. It's Spider-Man 2002. Take care, everybody.